Okay, we've got a whole lot of items on our agenda today, so we better get going because we've got things to do besides this board meeting. So we'll get started. I'd like to call the meeting to order. Will you all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, please? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. I think you can, I guess I can do what I want now. And I'll be right too, and I'll be right, whatever I do.
Just go, that's right.
So you can see what our mission statement is and the vision of the Airport Authority here. Next item on the agenda is the consent agenda. And if any board member wants to pull anything from the consent agenda, they're more than welcome to. The consent agenda is made up of routine day-to-day items that require board action but do not appear to have a significant public impact. Items may be pulled from the consent agenda for separate discussion or vote by any board member. Those items of the consent agenda include the approval of the board minutes from January 27th, payroll checks totaling $109,416.59, maintenance and operations checks totaling $406,715.47. The approval of the passenger facility charge totaling $50,000, and the financial reports for January. Is there any motion concerning the consent agenda, or would anybody like anything removed at this time?
I'll make the motion that we approve the consent agenda as presented.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? It's unanimous. Consent agenda B.
We also have today a consent agenda B, which consists of one item. It's a maintenance and operations check payable to Talcott Construction totaling $61,807.24. Commissioner Talcott, our chair, abstains from action on that. Is there any discussion, or I would take a motion to approve? So moved.
I'll second.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Same sign? Okay.
One abstention. Okay, director's report.
Yes, we've got a couple quick things to go through. In your packet, there's a set of charts from our Google Analytics that looks like this, a couple pie charts on the front and a line chart at the top of the page. And just wanted to present this to the board. We've been talking about now for a couple of months our Canadian campaign. We've launched a fairly sizable Canadian advertising campaign. The majority of the billboards started, as you can see on the line chart there, around February 6th. Our program consists of three main components. We have a digital billboard program. We're on display, I think it's about 10 total boards, isn't it, Laura? In Lethbridge, on the main roadways in the rotation there. We're also, we have a LAV campaign. They have ads in the restaurants and bars up there, and we've bought some of those. And then our third component is a Facebook and radio campaign that we're directing directly from here. Both Vivian and Laura are involved in directly implementing that piece. We have an ad agency doing the other two pieces up there. And as you can see here, the campaign has done a terrific job of driving some traffic. In the chart, in the table down below, it shows year to date what our visits to our website are, divided out by the geographic origin. And as you can see, Lethbridge has now jumped to the top generator of visits to our website with nearly a 450% increase over prior year. Calgary now weighs in at second. Yeah, the increase is nearly 300% to our website traffic from last year at this point. Medicine Hat's jumped 400% and is now generates the third most clicks to our website. Great Falls has fallen all the way to fourth in generator of clicks to our website. Still a respectable 7.5% increase, but Edmonton will likely surpass Great Falls this week as the fourth largest generator of visits to our website, with a very nice 1,100% increase in visits to our website. The interesting thing is we only right now advertise, our digital billboard campaign is only in Lethbridge, along with the lab ads only in Lethbridge. We have some Facebook ads that are penetrating further north up into Calgary. We have nothing in Edmonton. So that's simply the drive-through traffic that's generating this traffic. We've set up a unique website. We bought the URL flygtf.ca, which is, if you're familiar with Canada, that's their.com. So we own that URL, and we put it into place just for this campaign, so we can see these ads are directly being driven off of, this traffic is directly being driven by our ad campaign. We did that so we could have a little more trackability. So we're very excited about this. You can see kind of in the box up here in the corner, our total year-to-date web traffic now is up 137%. And so with the low rates that we have in place right now to about a dozen cities, we're really hoping to see a jump in February into month traffic in March. Ideally, if we can get 10% growth through the spring, that'll go a long way to replacing some of the summer downturn that we'll see with the lack of seats from Frontier. So we're really trying to get that kind of 10% growth. In 2012, we were able to sustain double-digit growth for a number of months in the spring. Again, that was driven a lot by Canadian traffic, and so we're back at it again, trying to get a sizable jump there. And then again in September, we'll be launching another campaign. We'll probably get out there in August, probably after the 4th of July. Allegiance has extra seats in September this year, so we'll want to be out in front of that with another ad campaign, again trying to get the traffic back that we'll likely see a slight decline in the summertime. So we're pretty excited about the results of this, and I think this, if we can get good traffic flow out of it too through the airport here, this might be a model of some of the stuff we would do in future years, because it's very important for us to improve that spring performance. That's really what's going to allow us to get those extra flights year-round. We do have a pretty good seasonal downturn that time of year. We're about 40% off the volume of an August in January and February. So if we can begin to modulate that line and get the entire line up, it's going to be much easier for us to talk to airlines about additional flights. So all in all, pretty encouraging results thus far. We're looking forward to seeing our first set of activity data from the airlines. So that's a good one. Also, just this prior to coming here, I was at a meeting with the MDOT folks, and we passed around a set of handouts that looks like this. This is the chapter of the corridor study the MDOT's currently undertaking that pertains to Gore Hill. This is very preliminary. This isn't public yet in terms of the information. They're just vetting it between the partners, but it gives some indication in the pages 2, 3, and 4, and 5 some of the ideas that they have for improving the exit up here. And as you can see, a couple of the main ideas they have: a roundabout base. These are preliminary levels of conceptual design. I pointed out in today's meeting that the grades up there, I mean, you really have to look at it in 3 dimensions to understand the complexity of the issue. Because if you could imagine slapping 2 big roundabouts on either side of the overpass up there, the amount of fill that would have to be generated is substantial. We'd be into retaining wall structures and quite a bit of earthwork in there. So at some point, and I pointed this out in the meeting, at some point these sort of traffic mitigating measures are going to cost more than doubling the bridge up. And so I think they need to keep a close eye on that as they look at some of these options, because the other way you could, of course, improve the capacity there would be to try and get to a wider bridge. As you know, today it's 28 feet. There is no pull-off lane, so if something breaks down, there's nowhere to put it. And those doubles and triples have a heck of a time getting around that radius. So we could really use the extra width. In all of these options, another option that we talked about today that's possible would be to break the airport traffic out. And I think that's probably one of the recommendations that will emerge from this. Everybody seems to be agreeable to it. To add a 3rd lane coming up the hill that would basically be a right lane, and then potentially as it approaches the intersection, break it out much earlier so that it doesn't compete for queuing space with the trucks and the other vehicles trying to go left or straight. So we could actually help the intersection by getting our traffic out of there earlier and keeping it away from the queuing area. When you go, next time you come up, if you look, there's really only about 100 yards of segregated queuing. Everybody else, or everybody up until that point is in one lane. So the idea would be to try and get the airport traffic out of the way. We would probably use a little bit of our property right at the top of the hill there to sweep a turn lane around through there, a 35-mile-an-hour exit lane off of there to get that traffic out of there. But I think it's encouraging. This intersection has really, the profile of it has raised significantly in the last year with this study. I think there's a general recognition through the city and through MDOT that there are some problems up at the top of the hill there in terms of function. They agree it's a failing intersection. So I think we are getting some attention. It'll be just a matter of what's practical and cost effective for improving it going forward. So we'll continue to work on that committee.
John, is there, maybe you said this, is there a reason why that last option is not included in here?
Well, and that was what was asked today, and so this is, like I said, a preliminary draft, and MDOT, they said, well, we should really have all the options for Gore Hill shown, all the potential options, because it may be, their point was, well, maybe these roundabouts would be good for a 20-year improvement, and look at level of service would be fine. And my point is, that may be great, but in year 25, if the roundabouts are complete throwaways, because now you need to widen that bridge, you've just wasted a tremendous amount of money. I mean, their own cost estimates in here show $8, $9, $10 million for the roundabouts.
Right.
Boy, you're getting awfully close to a bridge deck. In my opinion, that's probably a better investment, and a bridge deck's probably a 30 or so year improvement. So there's still a lot of conversation around this yet, and I just got this chapter, I think, on Friday or Thursday, so I haven't actually gone through it in detail yet, so I want to go through and read this. We have 3 weeks to make some comments on this, so if anyone has any comments, I'd be happy to forward those as part of our committee work on that one.
Okay.
Let's see, and then the last thing I was going to mention, we had a roadway planning charrette yesterday. Rod and I spent most of the day with our design team for the roadway project that's coming up this year, and we got our first kind of look at some of the cost estimates and some of the things that that we're going to try to get done with that program, and we are running a little high. In the early bid openings that CH2M Hill has done already this year, they're not seeing any down pressure on the asphalt prices at all. And so we're hoping that yet in the next couple of months there'll be some down pressure as the contractors are seeing those oil prices stick. But we are running a little high on that, probably in the neighborhood of $300,000 to $400,000 higher than estimate. So we may be coming back in March to amend that budget to see what else we can do. We have 2 projects kind of competing for the same funding this year. We have the taxiway connector C1, which is on the agenda today. And then we have the roadway plan. So there is some opportunity to move costs from one project to the other to help preserve total funding. The other thing too is we're getting into the roadway program and getting down to some of the detailed elements. And Rod and I yesterday, we spent quite a bit of time on signage, and we really need to update our signage plan with this roadway program. It's inconsistent, it's not attractive, and it does a very poor job of wayfinding. So in addition to the complexity or the getting more detailed cost estimates, we're actually adding elements into the project too. So there is probably next month we'll probably come back and talk about the scope of the program, change it a little bit, and the budget some too. But I did want to give you some advance notice on that. And that's all I have. We should probably move on to the other things.
Any questions? Okay, we're on to our first agenda item, the CFC rate change.
Yeah, as we've talked about the last couple of months, the CFC that we collect today is a per contract CFC, and the industry standard, I think, is for almost all airports nowadays is a per day fee. The contract fee certainly penalizes the weekend travelers, people that have a broken car that just need a day or two. They're paying $9 per contract. We're proposing to change that fee to $250 per day with a cap of
10 days.
10 days. Thank you. And we had a conference call. We've had several conference calls, but recently, just in the last week or two, we spoke to the rental car industry again and confirmed that this is what they want to move forward with. And there is unanimous support to do that, to move forward with the daily rate. It seems like the decision that was made, some 7 or 8 years ago now, was primarily based on not knowing the duration of stay and not being able to rely on the duration of stay because we didn't have good back data. So the board felt at the time that per contract was a more reliable way to ensure we had enough money to pay for our CFC program, which includes the rental car wash. Now we're many years down the road. There is consistency there. We can project it. We feel that the $250 will easily fund the needs of the CFC program. So we would recommend that we make that alteration.
Point of clarification. It says 7 days in here. Are we proposing 10 days? The airlines have asked, or rental car asked for 7-day cap.
Shoot, sorry. Let me just clarify that really quickly here.
They get charged $9
Per contract, so
no matter how long.
how long you stay. So if you're just, like I said, if you're picking up a car because you've broken yours, you're paying that full $9 load, which is fairly substantial. And so the rental car companies really felt that they could compete better for local business and the short-term business if they had this change.
7 days.
Is that comparable to other locations?
They vary widely, if you have, like, for instance, Seattle just built a $500 million rental car facility that only does rental cars. And so some of the future projections for their CFC go as high as like 14 a day. I think they're already at 8 or 9. I don't know if help from the audience out there, but yeah, so they can be fairly substantial. Ideally, we'll be retiring this debt in the next 6 to 8 years. I think it pays out, and then there'll be an opportunity to lower it, and maybe even get rid of it at some point. It's just mainly a facility fee for rental car type facilities.
Expenses. 7 or 10?
It is 7, sorry.
7.
Memo say 10 minutes.
Good for the user, long-term user. Is there a motion as to this CFC rate change as proposed by staff?
I'll make the motion. Can we approve it as submitted?
I'll second the motion.
Seconded, it's been moved and seconded that we'll go from a per rental time charge to a per day charge. Are there any questions or discussion at this time? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Time will tell whether the revenue is going to stay the same, go down, or go up. It's probably a function of how many boardings we have, too.
Yep, absolutely. It's we've done really well the last couple of years with increasing the rental cars.
Okay, so next item on the agenda is the retail development plan.
Laura, would you
Laura?
present that for me?
Sure. Nothing has changed from last month. Following the little write-up there is the plan that was submitted to us from the JGSC group. And this will help us in going out. Obviously, we need the market analysis, but the biggest thing that we're going to get from this is a list, a qualified list for us to kind of focus on, and also with the recon coming up this year to be able to get those meetings set up and really try to sell our land. We're hoping to get a developer on board. If we put all the retailers together, that'd be great, but ideally we would find a developer that was interested to take this contract on and develop that piece of land. So what we're asking for is to approve the $23,300 for the initial market analysis, recruitment strategies, pre-qualified prospects, and recruitment materials, and then also the $1,200 for the recon support for May. And there was a question on the time frame. We did talk to them after this, and and told them that it would obviously have to go to the next board meeting. But they were willing to kind of get rolling for it, on it early so that they could make it in time and make sure that we have everything that we need before the May timeframe.
And we feel that, you know, the environment is improving enough now for the retailers. The results are still very inconsistent. You know, Kohl's has a good quarter and JCPenney announces store closures, but, you know, we feel there's enough consistency in the growth that retailers are anxious now, and certainly the local economy is strong. So we think the environment's right. If we can get this information, get down to recon, have some meetings, and then come immediately out with an RFI. If nothing's coming from those conversations, bring out an RFI to attract developers into the market to look at the property. That's kind of our plan. While the data's fresh and it's still very, very relevant, we'd go out and look for those developers to come in and begin taking a look at the property. So that's kind of the plan. We've been kind of the last 2 years working with several specific developers, trying to get them to commit, you know, and we haven't gotten them that far yet. So we feel it's time to maybe put some pressure on that situation with by inviting the industry in to take a look at the property.
An example is last week I went down to an ICSC function down in Salt Lake, and I came out of it, I mean, it was a 24-hour type of thing, but I came out with one developer that's interested. And we want to come out with 20 that are interested and just hit it hard, so.
Right. We feel if we put the spotlight on it, you know, there's enough interest that somebody will probably commit.
So basically, we're providing them with the market data so they can decide whether it's a worthwhile venture for.
Data, but the data will be used to get us that list of people that really work for our community and for our project.
So we can use that data to present to them, but then we'll also be directly working with those retailers at Recon and talking to those retailers. So I think it's one of those things of repetition. See, the developers go out and they try to sell, you know, a basket of retailers. And so if we've had some conversations that are familiar with the project, it just gives us one more touch point for them to understand our project before the developer gets to them.
Anybody have any questions of staff at this point? The chair will entertain a.
I would make just one other, on this one, we're going to talk to our accountant to see if we can capitalize this as a capital project, but if not, we will have to amend the operating budget for this because it's not a budgeted expense.
Kind of sensitive to those issues, all of us.
You're going to depreciate it again.
Yeah. Does anybody have a motion?
I'll make the motion to approve the unbudgeted $23,300 as outlined in the January 22nd proposal.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Brad, did you say 23.3?
That's
Is
what
that
it's-
adding the other one on?
1,200 for the recon.
Yeah. So 23.3 plus the 1,200.
Down below the
Oh.
line, so to speak, so it'd be
Okay.
24.5.
Okay. Excuse me, I'll amend that, yeah, okay.
Thank you.
So it's been moved and seconded. Will you second the change to? It's been moved and seconded to approve the retail development plan and hiring of the JGSC group for services as described for $24,500. Is there any discussion at this point?
I just have one question, because we talked about this extensively last time. And yes, one of the questions was the timeliness because of the timing of the recon. I don't know that we ever got, I think we probably stopped short of saying, what will we do if we didn't do this? just keep doing what we're doing?
Yeah, we can still issue an RFI without the data, and we can still go to recon and try to talk to people. I think the idea here would be to try and identify those specific retailers that are, that work for our site, given the geographic location, and the data, the community data about what's missing in the community retail-wise. And so we're trying to, file this down to a more fine point, and we think that type of information, we can share that in our RFI, and our advertising for our RFI. So, we think it would be really beneficial to make the materials that we put out there more poignant for the community, so they don't have to go and look it up themselves. The idea would be to give them as much data as possible. And also, like I said, begin to meet with some of those retailers so they're familiar with our project. We've met with many of them before, and there are quite a few actual retailers that know this project. The developer we were working with last year met with a basket of retailers and was already working with a few of them. But we think this just continues the process.
Are you raising your hand?
Yes.
Mr. Doney, do you have a comment?
I
was
do.
going to ask you if this is anything that the Development Authority already does or would agree with this.
Well, the development authority would love to have the resources to be able to hire a consultant like this. And you guys are doing a remarkable job up here at the airport. And I know that you have a fiduciary responsibility just to the airport. But the airport is an entity of the city and the county. And I would just encourage you to consider not working on retail development in an island just as a property owner, because that's you're approaching it. You're approaching it as you own 2,200 acres and this is how you're doing it. It would be far better for the community as a whole to do this as a let's recruit retailers and dining and what have you to the Great Falls region, not just to one property.
That's a good point. Is this exclusive to the airport, or is this going to be available?
Yeah, again, and so, I guess I'd caveat that and say we're not an entity of the city and the county. We're under state law, we're more like our own municipality. But, and one of the limitations that we're under as an airport authority is our funds can't be used to market general community. It's a strict prohibition. And this has come up before when we've tried to do joint marketing efforts and things like that. The FAA is clear that we can market the airport, we can market traffic to the airport. What we can't do is fund general economic development. It's disallowed.
So let's look at it a different way. Is this specific to compete with all other entities in town?
Well, it's like any other landowner in town would do, and does do. We're trying to identify, again, we're looking at the geographic area that we're in to identify what retailers are best for our site. So we're not looking at what retailer might work well for, a grocery store at the other end of town or something like that. This is going to be specific to the interstate proximity, to the neighborhood proximity of Bellevue and that type of thing. They're also going to look at the community-wide statistics and say, this community does not have an electronics store. It's short on, children's clothing, and so what they're trying to do is, what is the demand, and then based on your site, what can you provide? So it's sort of two rings that they're looking at, and what they're going to be most interested in is where those rings coincide. Where does our site meet the requirements of retailers who would be interested in our community?
And we're shooting for our site, obviously, but every retailer or developer or broker that we've had come in so far, they're getting the
They go to
whole
the
city
whole
tour,
community.
so they're not going to pick us if they don't think we're the best location for them. So,
Which
I
I
mean-
think last month we brought that, that was somewhat discussed as to whether, I know that we're marketing just the airport area, but the question came up as to whether the chamber or the Great Falls Development, marketing it as a whole versus us just marketing this. They might market to that area down there, but are we duplicating everything?
Well, no one is buying the data right now that, of the other groups that we know of. And Brett has access to some of the data, but it's debatable whether we should be using that data for his access, for instance, for our benefit of a specific site. I mean, real estate, it comes down to location, location, location. If you're generally marketing, General Mills doesn't go out and say, hey, buy General Mills. They say, I have this product that fits your need. Procter & Gamble does the same thing. It's the same with our property. Unless we're specifically marketing a site and its capability, then we're just out there sending out messaging about what a great community we are. That's not going to lend itself to a successful development opportunity. What we're doing with the RFI is we're isolating it down to, here's a specific site at a specific point in time for you to come in and develop. And so we're giving people all the parameters of what's available to come in and develop the site. And then they have to go out and find the retailers that make sense for their site and the vision of what they think the site is best tuned for. And this product that we're buying will help with that decision making and help to articulate to them what the opportunity is. But yeah, I think we could generally market the community, but I don't think that's going to lend itself to a specific item. And I frankly don't think we could line up all the developers in the city at the same time and say, here's an RFP of 10 different sites. I just think it's unrealistic. I mean, everybody has their own marketing idea of what they want to do, who they want to try to attract, and how they're trying to do that. And brokerage relationships on top of that.
What's that?
Someone else is
Oh, yes.
Mauricio Primiani, what's up, Max? Has there been any study about that development, how many jobs it's going to create in the long term or short term?
There's in fact, Stelling just finished up a traffic study that would tell you how much employment would be down there. It's certainly hundreds of employees. I don't know, Mitch, if you remember any of those numbers.
Or new jobs or?
Well, yeah, I mean, so it's new retail, so it would be, new employment. It's not really, to me, it's not as much about the job creation. It's about the livability. I mean, we are missing certain brands in the community that people would like to have. Certain, it just like anything else that comes to the city, it raises the livability of the city.
Any other questions from the board? I guess I would just have one comment that yes, we are limited as to how we can spend our money, but we are one community. And if the airport authority does not get a certain store and some other part of town does, that's still very
Still
positive
absolutely.
for the airport and for the community. And so I think that's Brett's point. We have to go by the strict letter of the law, but we are still all here to support and promote our communities, whether, where our paycheck comes from or what board we're serving on. So with no further questions or comments, all those in favor of the motion to approve the spending of $24,500 with the JCS group as described, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, done deal. So, next item is the hangar projects.
Yep, hangar projects. As the packet in your board, as the memo in your board packet says, there were multiple phases of development over about a 4 or 5 year period related to the AdMax development. The concrete hangar, the paint hangar are complete and in operation today. The wood hangar project, which was known as Phase 2, they're using the wood hangar, but it was never, the renovations that were envisioned in the design work were never implemented. And then there's Phase 4, which is the second paint hangar, and that would involve relocating a couple of the alert hangars that came to the airport through the transition out of the F-16s into F-15s, and they were moved down and put in place as a sort of a 3-sided structure that exists today on a foundation wall with no flooring. And so in discussing our audit capital projects or audit depreciation schedules this last year. As we went through there and kind of did a fixed asset review. 2 of the phases are in our fixed asset report today and are being depreciated. Phase 4, which is in there as about a $251,000 design cost, and then phase 2, which is in the on the books at originally about $121,000, are on the books as a capital asset as though we were going to complete a project. However, it's now been for both of these 6-7 years. And the auditor pointed out that we probably have to write these costs off. And so in the current fiscal year, what we're recommending is let's write these costs off from an accounting perspective and get rid of them on the books, because it's unlikely that these projects will be implemented in the form that they were envisioned 7 or 8 years ago. So we're recommending that we write those off. And then in addition to that, the board took action a couple years ago. We were looking for a way to move forward with the second paint hanger. And so you can see here, we had previously, based on board feedback, they wanted to recover the costs of the second paint hanger. We had previously recommended a structure of $1,000 rent, roughly $1,050 for 20 years in order to recover that $251,000 design costs. And so what we're recommending now is that we write off more of that expense. And instead of having a supplementary rent add-on, that we would modify the rent to reflect the development opportunity underneath the dirt there. So in other words, we typically charge an improved rent or a basic ground rent based on the property. In this case, not only is there the improvements of the pavement and the utilities and things, but there's also recognizing the development opportunity of the air handling system that's next to this building already. We could justify a higher rent if that's the board's predilection. It's about a 10,000 square foot ground parcel underneath this. And so what I've recommended here would be that we would charge $1 ground rent per year instead of our 12-cent ground rent, which would generate a rent of, say, $10,000 per year for the entire parcel site. Going forward, what I'm recommending we do is put out an RFI, or request for information, for developers who might want to come into the opportunity, develop the hangar, actually own the hangar, and then they would either tear down what's there or renovate what's there in order to complete the hangar development. They would own the facility, and then they would have a long-term lease that they would negotiate with AdMax in order to operate that facility. That long-term lease would provide the financial backing for whatever financing that they wanted to do. We've had some preliminary discussion with a couple of construction companies who have indicated there is interest in that model, and that model is being deployed elsewhere in our community. So we think this is probably the best way to get a construction company to come in and use their best thinking to value engineer this project and get it down to what's needed. And then get it financed through their internal financing or whatever external financing they might get. And then, of course, the majority of the work here would actually be with AdMax to negotiate a lease and to negotiate the design, the need of the facility, what are the minimum requirements that we have to meet. So it puts a lot more industry predilection in there to determine what the best answer is than what we've done in the past of trying to either knit together a facility we got for free or develop it or design it ourselves and then tell a construction company they need to go out and build this. I think this probably offers the best opportunity to get that a quality facility for a reasonable cost.
So if I'm to understand this, we are forgiving the costs to date, but we are raising the land rent. And that land rent, I assume it will be a design build including the land lease, because you've got to have the lease. The developer has to have the lease on the land, and so,
Right.
so whether it's a cost for design materials or it's a cost in land, it's going to increase the cost of the development, one way or the other.
Yeah, so if we charged our basic ground rent for that parcel, it would be about a $1,200 a year ground rent. That's our standard practice if someone comes in today and says, I'd like to lease a parcel next to your ramp, we would charge 12 cents. This is a unique opportunity because there is, there's some investment next to it. I think it's reasonable to charge a higher rent for that. Not to say that we have to, but given the direction of the board in the past to try and make a project happen here, but at the same time to try and reflect the investment that's gone into the site, I'm recommending we just charge a higher ground rent. No matter what we do, I think we have to write these projects off this year. The auditor, I think, was pretty convincing that these projects have been out there long enough. They're not completed. There isn't an asset created, and so we need to write them off. So I would say that's almost a have-to type of situation at this point.
It's just a matter of what we do with the land.
Yeah, and then the question becomes, what do we do with what's left?
Okay. Any comments from the board or questions?
You put it out officially, John?
Yes.
To some of the
Yeah.
building contractors?
Yes, it would be published probably nationally. We would look for
But you've talked to somebody already?
We have talked to a couple of local companies that do this type of work, and just to see if, is this a far-flung fancy, or, is there something here that would work, and there is interest. And so, we told them both at the beginning of the conversation this would probably be advertised. And so we have drafted an RFI, and actually AvMax has it now. It's a fairly brief document. In an RFI environment, all we're trying to do is document the information and then get it out to everybody. And then the way the selection would be done in this case is we would give them, and this is kind of the last component of it, we would give them the parameters of the ground rent, or the ground lease, and we would say we want to issue a 30 or a 40-year ground lease at this rate with this ground rent built in. And then the selected party, AvMax, would actually be able to make that decision themselves. We wouldn't be party to it. We would step out of it. It would become a private-to-private discussion, and they can make the decision based on whatever they felt was best.
Just to clarify though, did you ask for the local developer's opinion, or if they had an interest in the project?
I think both. We had fairly good site visit with one of them, and we said, what are your thoughts about what's there? And we kind of got into a little bit, it's kind of a toss-up. You might be able to renovate what's there. You might be better off just to start over. So they're certainly, they're thinking about that some. But then, more or less we ended the conversation with, well, if we, our plan would be to issue this as an RFI and have people come in and present, their qualifications to do the work. And then, we would turn over that to AvMax and probably ask for proposals from the top 3 or 4 firms. And then they would make the decision based on what they felt was best and try to negotiate, from there. And they thought that was, something they would be interested in both cases. So we tried to be as transparent as we could with that whole discussion.
John, do we have any indications as to whether, let me see if I understand, $10,000 a month
A year.
for the land?
Yeah.
Then we would find somebody who's interested in making the facility usable. So that would add to whatever the leasing
Yep.
Business would have to pay.
Right.
Do we have any indication what the economic break point is before the rent is too high to be of any use?
We could certainly ask Mauricio, but it's a tough question. I think that's the touchy part of the discussion. And the prior bid, we did bid this, and information's in there. I think it was $1.2 million was the based on the old design to renovate the existing facilities. It's in here. So in the second paragraph, the low bid was $1.2 million. I think that's probably too high, but the idea here would be to try and have value engineering built into the program to get that cost as low as possible. It's tough to say. Certainly I'm sure they don't want to pay more, when a couple years ago it was. Yeah.
So, has anybody figured out, so the difference is between $1,200 and $10,020 a year?
Yep.
And based on a 30-year lease, let's say, what's the value of that additional?
Well, so it's, before what we were planning to do, if you look at 20 years, we were going to charge an extra monthly fee of $1,000. So we would have recovered our investment over 20 years was the plan
We
before.
don't have a number for that.
Yeah, so now we're charging less than that. So I mean, over
Okay.
30 years, we'd probably recover our investment in that,
Yeah.
in the original hangar.
One of the, if I might speak, one of the issues that we're still reviewing the proposal that was sent to us, and we are still weighing all our options. Since I think I mentioned it before, that we have a proposal in Jacksonville International Airport for an expansion. I can't share the proposal, but I can sure share the drawings and all that, which include a two-bay paint hangar and engine shop and different type of shops. So, but that's where we are right now. We're trying to figure out, where we're gonna put our eggs. If we leave them in Great Falls, or we move them somewhere else, or we'll split them. So I'm not sure what's gonna happen with that. That's where we are right now. We're definitely gonna meet with the contractor. I think I have one call from one of the guys, which I'm gonna try to meet with them next week. But if they rent, if we do anything, it's gonna be with an option to purchase the
Yeah.
facility. But then the land is gonna be subleased to the whomever building the hangar. So,
I think that can all be worked out. I mean, it can be a transferable lease, and, I think that's just in the devil of the details type of thing. I mean, we can, what I think was that transaction probably has to go both directions, because these buildings are connected by the air handler, system.
well, it's
So-
not connected yet.
Well, no, but they would be,
If it's done for that max, that's what we're planning on doing.
Right, and so what I would say is there probably needs to be options dual both ways to where, let's say AvMax leaves, we would obviously want to create a pathway for the developer to have the second paint hangar, because it's much more marketable to have them together. And then I think also in those negotiations that you guys would have with the developer, you would want to negotiate the other end of the transaction where you could buy that facility at any time from the developer. I think that's easily doable. We would just make the
Try
ground lease.
for that max not to leave, because that would not be a nice thing, right?
No.
It's not gonna be a-
Just for clarification here, reasonable, I'm not a strict Robert's Rules of Order kind of guy, but I think it'd probably be appropriate before we have any comments from anybody other than the board. I think it'd probably be appropriate to be recognized first. And again, I have a little more tolerance with the board members but I think just to keep things flowing, I understand where you're coming from, and this is nothing against you, but like I said, I'm a little lax in my Robert's Rules of Order, but I'm pretty sure that one does not fit under most any scenario. But I would just like to have one comment, and I've expressed this on this topic. I've expressed this to a number of people, and I'll say it at this public juncture right now. I've told John, it's no surprise to him. To me, this was one of the dumbest investments this board has ever made in their lives, is to invest these monies without some sort of commitment. And that's my personal opinion. That's from my business experience.
I would take offense to that.
Yeah, but,
I would take offense to that.
again, and that still holds true that, until recognized, please, just listen. But I think it was a poor decision, either by staff or the previous director of the airport. I don't know which. I can understand them wanting to get some money back out of it, because that's their responsibility once monies are spent, and we have a responsibility as a board to try and if we spend some monies, we have the intent to invest wisely and get a return on our investment. This one, to me, was just a really, really bad judgment call. And this is coming from a contractor's point of view. I happened to be around at the time, but those paint hangers, my humble opinion, general aviation, they probably work pretty good for, or a small airplane, but it doesn't fit for the airplanes that.
So to clarify maybe, because so everybody, I think, because I think you and I probably share the same belief, it would probably have been cheaper and easier to start from scratch rather than
To build a brand new
relocating.
building that you could
Yeah.
build exactly to your needs, because these buildings, just for reference, the airplanes that were in these hangars, if you go, from a steel perspective, the structural, there's a bearing wall going down the middle. So that means the trusses only span halfway. So that means you have to beef up the existing trusses and somehow, get a new header all the way across the front of the building. And by the time you do that, you have 3 walls, no roof, no center bearing, and everything else is just trashed. But anyway, that's that hangar. I think it was a very bad decision, and I don't think it's appropriate, personally, for the airport authority to go. Just because we made a mistake in the past, we made a mistake, grin and bear it, and move forward. I don't think we should try and get it out of a tenant because we made a mistake. That's my opinion. On the wood hangar, it's like, the fact that we spent any money trying to design a pre-World War II building that, a match is going to take it down in 20 minutes is beyond me altogether. And I think that may even be a worse investment. But the fact of the matter is, it's done, it's behind us, and I guess my opinion would be, we are going to write it off, we have to write it off. I'm surprised we didn't write it off already. I think we should do that, my opinion. But to expect someone else to pay for our mistakes, I think is not appropriate.
So you prefer not to try and recoup the expense?
20 years.
Would I prefer not to try? I think we have tried. And what we found out is that they're going, what, are you goofy? Just because you made a mistake, does that mean I have to pay for your mistakes? That's my opinion. I mean, certainly we can try, but I think it was just a mistake by this board, by staff, or the combination of the two. And the decision was made, and I don't know exactly what made up, how that decision was made, and I'm just saying, in my opinion, it was a very bad decision. And mistakes happen.
The only
move
motion
on.
on the board is, or that's under discussion, is whether or not we try to recoup that.
That's right.
We have to write it off too. I mean, that's the other thing.
Yeah,
We have to decide that, but.
I guess I've already crossed that.
Mhm, mhm. Yes.
If we're writing it off, then I would suggest a discussion about recouping becomes moot. And I think that it seems to me that there's an opportunity to make it into a revenue stream for the airport. And from an economic perspective, I think that the market would determine what the value of that building is, and that would determine the revenue stream. So if somebody wanted to keep track of how we were doing in recouping those written off costs, I'm just suggesting it might take a different timeline based on what the market's willing to bear.
Well, and that kind of gets back to, so the other limitation we have is we can't discriminate between different tenants on the ground rents that we charge. So, and the way we have to kind of, I think, approach this is we can demonstrate that there's different costs incurred in certain sites, and that can be built in. So I think we kind of either, in my opinion, we either have to say it's a 12-cent ground rent like every other improved site that we have, or we have to say, recognizing the business deal that's here, it needs to be something other than that. So I mean, not to nuance it too much, but we either have to say it's 12-cent ground rent, and I'm not a strong proponent of either of these. I understand both sides of it. I mean, there's been money spent. As a public agency, we probably ought to try to be responsible and do what we can. At the same time, it makes it more developable if we don't burden it with that additional cost. But I think that's the policy question. And the last time the board decided it, they did want to try and recover some of that.
Yeah, the fact of the matter is we're not forgiving anything. If we're getting an extra $1,000 a month in rent, or we're going from $1,000 to $10,000.
A year, it's a year.
Well,
I was saying a month.
Yeah.
Well, excuse me, yeah. But that's why I asked, what's $9,000 a year? over
Yeah.
30 years,
Right.
it adds up to real money, and so we aren't forgiving anything, we're getting a substantial, we're getting a lot more back out of it than we have out of anything
Well,
prior to this.
And there's certainly an argument for going, to be done with it and just charge the ground rent. I mean, I understand that point of view. I mean, it helps move the development along, and even though it's only $1,200 a year, I mean, it does nothing for the bottom line, frankly. It still helps to get a project done that's been sitting out there for a number of years.
Yeah. Any other questions or comments at this time? Would anybody like to tackle a motion on this one?
I'll move that we approve the motion.
And that motion would be,
I have to speak the entire motion.
okay, so that would be to forgive,
Write-off.
to write off.
Write-off the previous.
Okay, so that's a bookkeeping thing.
Yes.
That's strictly bookkeeping, and to, if there's any further development, to charge $10,020 per year. Is that your motion?
That's my motion.
Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second it.
Is there any discussion at this point of the motion?
Would it be beneficial to consider allowing the authority management to negotiate somewhere between the 2 points?
Yeah, it might be, but that's not the motion. Yeah.
I know, that's a question.
That's a question, yeah. It certainly would be a possibility. Are there any other questions or comments? All those in favor of the motion to write off our investment in design to date and to request any further development on the site of the second paint hangar to have a land lease rent of $10,020 per year, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say nay. Nay. Did you say yes?
I didn't vote.
You didn't vote. Are you going to vote?
Nay.
Nay?
You could have abstained.
Oh.
Yeah,
My question was going to be the same as hers. It seems to me we have two motions really rolled into one. One is to write off the debt,
Mhm.
and the other is how to proceed.
Right. Well, right now, we do not have approval of the motion. So we'll take that as having abstained from this vote, so it's a tie vote, 2-2. Are there any other proposed motions at this time?
I'm going to blame it on.
I'm not, okay, I'll look at you when I say that.
My head cold and the fact that you keep looking at
What's the
it.
process for the board? Can we motion to table it and bring it up at a work session to discuss it again?
You could, my preference would be, if you have a leaning one way or the other, that we try to execute it, because we'd like to get this on the street while the construction year is still fairly young. Just because I think we give another month or two, a lot of these companies are going to be wrapped up in their work for the year. And I think, if we can get to them now, there might be a little window in there that we could get their attention. Not that the project could be constructed maybe this year, but at least we might get interested parties.
It would allow them to move forward.
Yeah.
May I ask John a question?
Mhm.
What does the amount of rent that the airport charges for the land have to do with the timeline of involving contractors?
It's the RFI. We want to publish an RFI, and we want to give them as much information as we can about the opportunity, because they're going to have to decide whether or not they're interested in presenting AdMax with a proposal. And so ideally, if we could be on the street in the next, sometime in March, and ask proposal for people to come in and present their credentials. We want to fill in as many blanks as possible, and one of the blanks they're going to need to know is, what are they paying for the site?
Yeah, they can't put together.
They really can't do much without that, because if we wanted to charge, the $20,000 per year, it certainly makes it a tougher transaction than if we were charging nothing. So it's just one of those things that they need in order to proceed. Because the RFI is going to say things like, the infrastructure becomes yours, the airport doesn't want it anymore, so if you want to tear it out, tear it out. If you want to keep it and expand upon it, do that.
It's an important piece of the puzzle
Yeah.
for a developer to put together a package and what they're going to charge. So is there,
Can I have a question too? I guess I got caught back in the earlier part of the conversation. Per accounting rules, we're writing this off. That's
Correct.
not, that shouldn't even be an action item. We're writing off $372,000.
Correct. That's correct.
Is that right?
that would be correct. So now
Okay.
it's a matter of what?
So we really, it
Well,
comes down to.
I think the board still has to decide to do that, though, because, that's well over my expenditure limit.
okay.
So the board, I think, still has to say, yes, we want to write these costs. We want to expense these costs, because.
We didn't have a choice in the 30 million, did we? So, and they're asking for 400
Well,
for,
there's for 20 years, or 20 years of the choices.
I think
Didn't
we
you really
should.
know?
It has to be two motions.
That's where I'm getting confused. We're actually
Okay.
asking
To complete.
for two totally different things here.
Yeah, it is.
Excuse
Okay.
me.
so you're gonna,
I will make a motion that we,
Right.
following accounting principles, write off the Phase 4 and Phase 2 costs totaling approximately $372,000.
is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Is there any discussion? All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say nay. It's unanimous. Okay, that was the easy one. Is there another motion concerning the land lease rate?
Deb, before I make this motion, do you have a question?
I find myself in the position of trying to put myself in the place of a prior board, which is impossible, or prior staff, we don't know. We all have our version of events or how we've heard. So I have mixed emotions, I guess I'm saying. We do have an obligation, I think, to be fiscally responsible in all aspects. So I'm cognizant of that. I'm just kind of struggling with this particular.
Still with the motion, it's either a yes or no, right? We can't change the motion as you've written it.
Oh, no, you can make whatever motion you like and, and vote on that. I have a recommendation that I've made, but
That was just,
you can ignore the recommendation and propose something completely different.
Mhm.
And, I'll be completely honest, I kind of threw a dart, to try and, based on the guidance of the last board that wanted to recover the full cost, and then we know what the ground rent is, so we can't go below the ground rent. We're not allowed under, statutory requirement. So, there's kind of a range in there of $1,000 per month to 12 cents per year that we've been kind of considering, and I said, okay, well, in other deals that I've done in the past that have had a high degree of infrastructure investment that existed previously, like for instance, if you're tearing down one building and you're putting another building right where it used to be, so the utilities and stuff are there, we've kind of split the baby and we've used, $1 per square foot to do that. It's, I wouldn't say it's market-driven specifically, but that's what I've done in the past, and so that's kind of what we have here.
With that in mind,
What's the dollar amount, John? 10,000 what?
$10,050 per year, or I'm sorry, $10,200 per year.
10,020.
Oh, I'm reading, yep, $10,020 per year would be the total of the ground rent.
So I make a motion that we accept the $10,020 lease rate as proposed in the motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Is there any further discussion on the lease rate of $10,020 per year. Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed, nay. But
Sorry, nay.
Nay, the motion passes then. As approved, or as proposed by the board. Yes, Dwight?
A point of clarification, that land that undeveloped hangar sits on is not leased at this time?
It's not.
Does AdMax have first right of lease of that land?
First right of refusal.
Okay. And then is the airport authority proposing to go out on the open market to see if there's any interest in leasing that other than AdMax?
Not at the time, no. What we've drafted right now is an RFI that more or less articulates, that AvMax would be the tenant. And so you don't have the opportunity to lease it to Boeing. AvMax is the tenant. And so the way we envision proceeding from here is, we'll work with Mauricio to wrap up the RFI over the next few weeks, hopefully. We'll publish it, and we'll be looking for firms to come in and propose to AvMax what they would want to do. And so there'll have to be a little bit of back and forth on minimum requirements. So we'll get some general information from the contractor, their ability to build a hangar, their ability to finance a hangar, those types of things. Working with Mauricio, we'll probably ask for formal proposals from a couple of them, maybe just one of them. And from that point, AvMax would take that proposal and choose who they want to work with. And they would more or less negotiate their own lease. So it would become a, kind of a, we're only there to execute the ground lease with the winner. That, so we kind of disappear for a while after we've helped, kind of identify these people. Hopefully AvMax and this developer come together with a value engineered proposal for what they want to build at an acceptable cost with the backing of the lease to help with the financing. And with AvMax, we can negotiate in all those terms like, for instance, AvMax can purchase out the development costs, or if, for instance, AvMax left, they're going to want protection on the other side that they could get the second hangar somehow. So we'll have to put that in there.
So the vote that was just taken and approved and established ground rent for the facility.
Right.
If it's exercised.
Yep. And so it just becomes a line in the RFI that says the ground rent for this opportunity would be X. And then, from there, like I said, the developer would hopefully work with AvMax to negotiate the actual lease agreement.
So next time we do comparable rental rates for the airport, Dwight, be prepared. We have a new comp rental rates that established on the airport here to take into consideration for all of the tenants. But don't worry. Don't worry.
Be prepared. You said it.
I'm sure there's enough there in salvage value. Don't worry.
Yeah. Okay, next agenda item. That would be the taxiway Charlie 1 connector. Speak to that?
Yeah, so taxiway Charlie 1, I think finally identified the preferred alignment. You see it in here. As we said last month, it's the blue alignment, allows MANG the opportunity to expand the ramp in the future without creating a design flaw under the new FAA guidance, which is brand new this year. And so our goal is to construct this project this year in order to complete the areas, particularly inside the safety zones of both 1634 and runway 321. It's critical that we get that work done in a manner that doesn't disrupt operations, and so we're looking at some evening work. We think most of our landings can be accommodated on 1634, so that'll allow us to work on 321 on the landing side of the day. So ideally, after 5 p.m. or whenever the last Allegiant flight leaves, we would close the runway for 3 days in a row, Tuesdays, Wednesdays, Thursdays. We would work on the safety area for a period of 2 weeks during those 3-day schedules and get the safety zone work done. Then we would flip around and do the same thing on 16. So we close, runway 16 we have more latitude, we can close that a little longer because 725 will still be open. The key thing this year is to try and get all that safety zone work done, so that next year, when we have the big grant, which the FAA is planning, we'll be able to do 1634 and runway, and the new taxiway C, which is the parallel to runway 1634, if you prefer Charlie. We'll get all of that work done without disrupting operations on runway 321. So this project is a total of about $1.625 million right now. That's our estimate. If for some reason this project, as we get closer in design, gets more expensive, we'll probably begin deferring work into next year's program to get this cost down a little bit. But we think we can complete the entirety of the work for about $1.625 million. So we would recommend to the board that they approve the design and construction of runway connector C1 for that amount.
Okay. Any comments or questions at this time? If not, the Chair will entertain a motion as to the recommendation of staff.
I move that the project be approved as described.
Okay, and I think that's the recommendation, approving the design and construction of taxiway Charlie 1 connector for amount not to exceed $1,650,000. Is there a second?
I'll second the motion.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the design and construction of the taxiway. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Motion passes. That was a lot easier than this one. We're on a roll now. Keep it easy. Keep it easy for us. Okay. Newsletters. That's not quite as easy as the last one.
Updates, reports. Last month, the board asked that we put together some recommendations. This gets back to the communication between staff and the board, and making sure we're providing enough outlets for questions to be answered or strategic thinking to be shared. And so what I've recommended here is kind of a three-part structure. And I'm recommending that we continue the board weekly reports as we've done since I've been here, and that those be direct to the board, recognizing that they could be discoverable. And so we will still have to clean those a little bit, sterilize them some, so that you're not disclosing any business relationships or anything that would be not good to disclose. And then the second piece of the structure would be a community monthly report that we would put out on the same email list that's been used in the past, that kind of summarizes many of the things that are in the weekly report and provides a public outlet for that information, so that people are getting some information. I think that's built a lot of goodwill. The weekly reports have been out there. People know a little bit more about the airport, which I think is a good thing, and we want to encourage that. And then the third component of it is an Air Service Committee. I think there's enough strategic business right now related to the airlines and the marketing of the passenger business that we should convene a committee. My proposal is that we meet bi-monthly at noon prior to the board meeting, and that it would include 3 board members, and that would just be an opportunity to discuss what's going on the contract, on the contractual side, airline and marketing wise. And my only recommendation is the chair not be on that, only because we already meet monthly, and so I have the opportunity to share that information directly. That's what I'm recommending. I mean, there's certainly no...
So is there a motion that goes with this, or it doesn't look like it?
It wouldn't have to be an action item, no. I mean,
it's not an
if
action item.
this is the board's, if the board's satisfied with this recommendation, then we would just implement it.
Well, I think it makes sense to me. Certainly there are certain items that we're in a very competitive nature out there with airlines and other airports, and there's certain information that would be detrimental to be released to the public prior to a decision being made.
Yeah.
And there's some very sensitive business partners that we work with, so I think it makes total sense that
And the airlines,
recommendation of the staff.
yeah, the airlines often don't want anything released up until they're ready to sell tickets. And that's one of the the key issues we deal with is we work, staff may have recommended to the executive committee well ahead of time a certain action, but until the executive okays it, that information is never public. And it can put the planner in a really awkward position to be outed sort of ahead of time, so.
Okay. and
So
let's-
would you envision an actual appointed standing committee, or just 3 directors show up every second month, or? Because
I think it should be a standing
Same, 3.
committee myself, but, I understand, and what we would endeavor to do, there'd only be 2 committee members that weren't involved, would be to try and catch them up, via probably a phone call or something like that, if there is strategic information.
Anybody want to volunteer for having lunch up here before the board meeting?
Lunch is included?
No, I don't think so.
No.
You don't get parking, you're probably not going to get lunch.
Yes, I will volunteer.
Are there any other, there's 2, is there a third one that would like to volunteer?
who was the other one?
Sean would like to.
Well, certainly,
I would. I
Would
didn't
you?
hear who the third one was. One of you?
Debbie? No,
No, and who?
right, Debbie, and,
Oh, I thought you said that.
no, we have, but we've only got 1 dissenter, actually, so, got three right now.
Who's the third?
Commissioner Buck.
Commissioner Bach?
Okay, that's what I was trying to get out of you.
Yeah, I'm sorry about
Thank you.
that.
I'm
Sorry
like,
about that.
Just tell me who the third
Yeah.
one is. Okay.
Okay. So we have our committee before lunch, and that's all we have to do with that line item, so we're
Yes.
ready to move forward.
Starting next month?
Starting next
Okay.
month.
And it would be prior to our board meeting?
Yes, at
Oh,
noon
okay.
prior to the board meeting. I figured that was the most efficient way to use our time.
Mhm.
Sure.
We don't have to come up here another time. Okay, next item is the Republic minimum wage amendment.
The Republic parking contract allows for Republic to request amendments to their contract based on an increase in minimum wage. As you may know, the state increased their minimum wage at the start of the year in January. And so Republic is requesting that increase in their contract. I think historically, we have not always allowed that increase. I think there's been some times where we haven't. But we always allowed the increase? Okay, so past boards have always allowed the minimum wage increase. I thought there was one in there.
There's only been 2.
There's only 2, okay. So they're allowed to ask. We don't necessarily have to do it, but in the practice in the past has been to do it. So they are requesting the change, and the total increase will be about $1,100 per month on the maximum end of it for that increase.
In retro to January.
Yeah.
It's not the living wage, but it's minimum wage.
Depends on where you live, right?
Yeah, it depends on where you live.
So it's
Yes.
actually only an increase of $200 a month, though.
No, it's actually it's up to $1,100 a month, I believe, yeah.
But from 900, so we're only increasing it
Oh.
200.
Is that right? I thought it was 1,100 total.
Yeah.
Oh, well, that's not as bad as I thought it was.
$200.
No, so it is a $200 offset, yeah.
200, okay.
Yeah, sorry about that.
You can probably live with that, in the scheme of things.
And that's about $1 million revenue item for us.
Yeah, is there a motion to,
I'll make the motion to approve the $200.
is there a second?
Second it.
Been moved and seconded to approve the request as submitted by Republic. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed. Another easy.
Oh, here come the hard one.
There, okay. Phase 3 residential sound.
Back in May of 2014, the board approved the $2,222,000 budget to design and construct Phase 3 of the residential sound insulation program. That's where we're putting new windows and doors and other improvements to homes. The design is nearly complete, and then actually it is complete, and the project's been bid out. As you can see in the package from KLJ, the low bidder is slightly below the engineer's estimate. So we do have a little bit of savings there. It's within the approved budget, but we did want to give the board the opportunity to to approve the contract for construction of the residential sound installation program. Design is already complete. We said we would come back and before we took on any new phases, so then the Phase 4 program, the board will get another opportunity to consider the program once we have the new sound contours. We should have those sound contours next month, maybe even for next month's meeting. So Phase 4, which would be the next design phase, we'll get the opportunity to true that up against where we think that the noise contours are with the C-130s and be certain that we're not insulating homes that would be outside the program. This is just a follow-on from the design that was approved last May.
And these homes, we do know are affected by the C-130.
These are the closest in homes. They're on West Hill in all cases, I think.
Yes.
Yeah, so it's unlikely that they will move out of the contour with the current generation of airplanes.
Would that be correct? These are,
And just to clarify, the Phase 3 homes are under the old noise exposure model, so they're already in the program.
they're already in the program, so to answer the question, we don't know whether they need to be insulated under C-130 standards or not. These were determined to be needed and insulated, and the work done based on the previous airplanes.
On the previous airplanes is how we selected these homes. So they've been approved by the FAA, they were approved under the old noise exposure map. The Phase 4 homes, which you guys have approved that design in Phase 4, those will have to be selected after the noise exposure map update's completed.
So but the Phase 3 homes, they're all on West Hill. We've worked from the closest out, so it's. I mean, in my opinion, it's unlikely that these
Yes,
will be-
I agree, I just had to ask. So is there any discussion or questions on this ongoing program that, with any luck, this will be the last phase or getting close to it?
I don't know.
Maybe not from you guys' point of view, but from our point of view.
Hopefully, we're getting close to it.
Yeah, we're getting close. So entertain a motion.
So
approval?
our action is just to concur with who we're giving the bid to?
It's just a confirmation. We typically do a public bid, and once the bids are out, we publish the result and approve it.
Approving the low bidder as presented to us.
Yes.
Is there a motion to that effect?
Sorry. I'll approve sorry, what's the wording?
Move to approve.
I'll move to approve the motion as written.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second.
So that would be,
Regency Northwest Construction.
yeah, Regency Northwest Construction for, it appears to be $1,055,580. Is there any further discussion?
I'm imagining none of these are local companies, is that correct?
Doesn't sound like it.
And to just clarify, we did, during our pre-qualification process, contact multiple local contractors, and none of them submitted qualifications,
Okay.
so.
Okay, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed, please say nay. It's passed unanimously. And then we have
Everybody's favorite subject.
the cart. Don't.
Recognize we have a new board member. Several months ago, the city notified us that we had some debris in one of our sewer lines that leaves the airport, and they clean it every 2 years, roughly. This one they've been cleaning every year because it tends to attract debris. We kind of have a dead-end line over there with very little flow on it, and it's where they dump all the lab cars from the airplanes. And as you well know, there's very little water flow accompanying that. And so the line over the years has been somewhat of an issue with this accumulation of debris. We're looking for a solution to solve that. We've asked Stelling Engineer, KLJ, formerly Stelling Engineers, to help us with that. And what they've designed is basically a holding tank setup where the effluent from the lab carts will be put into the holding tank. There'll be a pipe some ways up on the tank such that the material solids will settle, the liquid will flow out, and then the solids, we would try to get some sort of septic type action in there to decompose it, and if it isn't being decomposed, we would pump that tank probably on an annual basis. Some of the airports are doing it up to once every 6 months, but relatively inexpensive operating costs. We, in looking at this along with KLJ, we feel this is a much easier solution than trying to increase the water flow on that line, which would necessitate some type of freeze protection, water down there, or potentially water in Dwight's hangar, which is adjacent to this line, and the continuing operating costs of water. We feel this is probably a better solution, more likely to work, and the city seems to be agreeable to it. We had initially thought we could do this for $10,000 or less, and so we came to the board and didn't ask for an action item. We had intended to do it under our emergency provision that allows me to spend up to $10,000 for a capital project. We now believe we're going to exceed that, and so we're asking for permission to spend up to $17,000 to implement this change.
So, we hope this takes care of it.
We've gone around the tree one more time with both the engineer and the city to confirm that everyone believes this is the end-all solution. I've passed on to them that this seems to be the third time that this issue's been addressed in the last 20 years, and we don't have an appetite for a fourth, and so it really needs to be a no-nonsense fix to the solution for the long term, and everyone seems confident that this is the fix. And frankly, it makes the most sense to me too, if we're trying to prevent solids, to have a tank to catch the solids. So I think it's probably the best opportunity we have to remedy the problem long term.
Unless someone else has their own design that they would like to propose at this time, I think we should probably approve the one presented. Anybody willing to make that motion to approve the spending of $17,000, or up to $17,000 for the proposed design that's in your packet?
I'll make a motion to proceed with the laboratory dump improvements to not exceed 17,000.
Thank you. Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve proceeding with the lab cart dump station up to the amount of $17,000. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, please say nay.
Nay.
Nay. There's 4 ayes and 1 nay. All right, it's not unanimous. Okay. We are to the point where we're at the Airport Authority board comments. Unless there's anything else. If there is, keep it till next meeting. Never mind. Board comments. Commissioner Buck, any comments at this time? Commissioner
No, it
Bowman?
would be interesting though to see if that tank ever needs to be cleaned, and if so, how often. Is that part of the concept, that somebody may have to come in and clean that out?
Yeah, it would function like a septic tank in your yard. Ideally, if you can get the bacteria right, it would do most of its own breakdown, and that would be released with the water. But given, as you know, people that drop watches and everything else down lavatories and the airplane, there's going to be some stuff that isn't going to break down. And so, we are going to have to pump it and just keep an eye on it, and on some occasions, have it. The good thing is there's plenty of vendors to do that. It's not a specialty of any kind that we have to get done. And I can tell you, other airports I've been at have a triturator set up. The last one I built was over $120,000, and basically it's a giant garbage disposal that can, it can grind almost anything. But they're very expensive, and when you break one, they're incredibly expensive to have serviced. So I frankly think this is I'm surprised it's not used more often. I actually think it's a really good idea.
Commissioner Rooney, any comments?
No comments.
Commissioner Goodson?
No.
Commissioner Evans?
No.
I have no further comments at this time. Are there any comments from the public at this time?
I just want to, Mauricio Primiani from AMAX, I just want to say that I'm pretty sorry what you said about that it was a mistake or it was a waste of time or money what the airport did when they built the facilities for AMAX. I don't know how many of you remember that corner. I'm sure you guys do. I was at that end of the airport and, for the last 8 years.
I don't understand what you're saying.
Well, you said that the airport, the previous board and the previous people in charge of the airport made a tremendous mistake investing on what they invested for IMAX.
No, you misunderstood me. I'm sorry. I was expressing my concern about the investing in a hangar building that was not designed. The one that's sitting over there that has not been improved.
Well, it is more than that because back then there was no money to build a brand new hangar. So I think what was done back there was actually what needed to be done to make it happen. So, because I don't know, a lot of you guys don't know the whole story, I think. But back then, 8 years ago, that's what we had to work with. And I think it was if not, IMAX would not be here. Because building a new hangar back then would have cost at least 6 or 7 times more than what those hangars cost.
Well, I'm
So
not.
we had to work with what we had. And
No, and I understand that, and I think you're misunderstanding what I'm saying. I'm not. This is nothing against AvMax at all whatsoever. What I'm saying.
I'm not what I'm saying, but I mean, I don't think it's fair to. It's not fair to the previous board members or previous directors to.
And I guess hindsight is 20/20, but in my own personal opinion, and it's only based on my opinion and my construction experience and my engineering background, that money would have been better spent starting from new. And I guess.
We all had that opinion back then. That's why we never did the hangar. That's why we never went forward with the wood hangar project because it made no sense. The wood hangar project really made no sense. So
you're agreeing with me or disagreeing with me? I can't tell.
On the wood hangar, that's why we never went on with the wood hangar project because it was, I mean, at the end of the day, we would have spent $4 million and still had a wood hanger. So we scratched that off. But the rest of the stuff, it had served very well to AvMax and, I created a lot of jobs and a lot.
Oh, yeah, I don't I'm talking about the specific,
economy.
the specific building that is sitting there is the only thing I'm commenting on. And I guess what you're saying to me is that you approve of the decision made by the board today, which is to charge in additional rent to AvMax the $10,000 a year because you think it's a good investment.
That makes really no difference. $10,000 a year is not gonna kill us or make us. What's above that is what's gonna make a big difference.
Well, good.
That's fair enough. I mean, but it's still $10,000 a year. It's fair. I mean, I consider it fair.
Okay.
It's not gonna make a big difference.
Well, that's good.
$120 a month. So that's not the issue. Is gonna be the cost of finishing the facility. If AvMax decides to move forward with the expansion plan here, or decides to.
I'm glad to hear that.
Move it somewhere else.
The board made the right decision. It doesn't come to $120 a month, but I'm glad you agree with the board's decision, and I hope I'm proven wrong that it doesn't make any difference. Yeah.
1,000, whatever.
Yeah.
So that's fair. I mean, that's fair. We have to figure out what's going to be the cost and if it's going to be beneficial for us to do the investment. And if AvMax doesn't decide, if AvMax decide not to do it, so, and I know you made a comment that it will be offered to others to complete it, so you have to keep in consideration that, AvMax hold a lease for all the ramps around the hangar, which is the same situation with the upper shop, that AvMax has the lease on the parking, all the parking available in front of outside the fence, so all those things have to be taken into consideration.
Yeah, I mean, the goal, if we can't find a way to get the paint hanger, constructed, would be to find some other use for, for that parcel, that shell, if there is one. I mean, hopefully, and I really think this is probably the best way to bring together the people that can figure it out, because we're gonna go out and try to find a developer, a construction company that can figure out how to lower the costs, and I think that's probably our best opportunity. But if we can't find a way to do the paint hanger, from there, maybe we, consider putting just a plain hanger there to get the development done. And I don't know if you guys would, if that would be beneficial to you at that size or not, but.
You should have to consider everything that is already in place.
Yeah.
Access to the facility and all that kind of stuff. So,
Well, I apologize if I offended you. I think AvMax has done a ton of good for the community, for the people that are working for AvMax and their families, and I certainly appreciate AvMax being here. I didn't mean to offend you. I just think it was a bad decision, and that's my opinion.
I will hate to see the airport going in from the job creation focus that it had to, we don't care much about how many jobs we create, so that's my personal opinion.
If you're speaking to me in particular, I think most people that know me would probably be surprised by that comment if you're speaking to me directly. But if there's any other comments from the audience at this time, if not, the meeting's adjourned. And give us 10 minutes, actually give us to 10 minutes to, and we'll jump right back into the work session, and hopefully we can get work through that a little bit quicker than this regular meeting.
It's cold in here.
I know, I brought my jacket. I felt it.
Oh,
It is kind of cold.
is it? I was thinking it was nice in here this time.
For as much as we pay in electricity.
Yeah, it's pretty cold.
Yeah, we should.
Yeah. Rosemary wants to do that.